Hello gamers, I am Matthew Cross, also known as Dark1778 here for the HoldTheLine.com podcast, episode 15, the gamer stereotype, gamer equal male. What we will be taking a look at this week is another aspect of the gamer stereotype that automatically makes the assumption that all males are gamers, or all gamers equal males, with our panel. Let's see and find out what our panel has to say on the topic. However, before we get into the podcast, let's go over some community news and highlights. First up, Vega Goose reviews Hitman Absolution. Does this hit the target or does it miss its mark? Watch the video review by Vega Goose to find out. And for the HoldTheLine.com article highlight, Amalthea327 takes a look at MMO, crafting, and grinding. Can it be any more of a grind? Well, read the article and find out. And lastly, folks, a reminder that we are still doing our We Are Gamers campaign. You can find us on Twitter or Facebook with it. Simply hashtag it with We Are Gamers. We are taking audio, video, and text submissions as well. You can find this and more information on our forums at holdtheline.com, as well as information on MMO Bomb and as well as BSN. Alright, and welcome to the HoldTheLine.com episode 15, the gamer stereotype of gamer equal male. And with us we have Jenesee Gray from the Gray Area podcast. Welcome, Jenesee.
Hey, thanks.
Tom Vertigo once again from Vertigo Media Network.
What's going on?
Breefolk.
Hello.
And Amalthea327.
Yo.
So, what have we all been up to? So this is just an open question.
I've been, as I told you earlier, playing a ridiculous amount of DayZ, which is a mod for Arma 2, since last time I was on, and I cannot help but just open it up every time I'm on my computer and play, which is ridiculous because it's basically a long-term survival game, so each session ends up being hours and hours and hours. Then I get shot by a sniper, lose everything, start over fresh.
Amal got me into playing EverQuest 2 again, and so I've been playing that a lot, and my multiple alt syndrome has kind of kicked in a lot, so I just sort of jump around doing weird stuff in that game.
Says the resident EQ2 player.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Rachel, what have you been up to?
I finally beat my professional playthrough of Resident Evil 6, and I started my No Hope playthrough, which is accurately titled Don't Get Any Perks, No Unlimited Ammo, Extremely Limited Inventory Space. So yeah, it's been fun. I've tried to not bite my controller.
Or throw it at the TV.
Yeah, that'd be bad.
And Jenesee.
Well, I'm about halfway through the demo of Dead Space 3 right now, and trying to get through that without screaming. And I'm kind of into Borderlands 2 lately. I've been playing that co-op with my friends, and Don't Starve, which I don't know if anyone plays, but it's a really fun game. Kind of a
painfully addictive.
Yes, painfully addictive. I actually just interviewed a developer from there so I could get extra tips on how to survive, because it's just something I play all the time and then rage quit.
Quite a few times of rage face, Jenesee.
Yes, I think it was 32 days into the game or something when I died the first time, after having gained stuff, and yeah, it was a bad day. It's
sad day.
So,
I've not played that. I've looked at that and thought, oh, that looks really good.
Yeah, look, I did like that interview you did, by the way.
Oh, thanks. It's really fun. I mean, I'm not super into the survival kind of gathering hunter stuff, but this is one of those games where after a while, you kind of get thrown into it and there's no instructions. You have to figure it all out on your own, and it becomes fun to just see what happens. It's element of surprise.
Which is great, unlike certain games that came out that were bugged as hell and got pulled off Steam. What game is that? Oh, it's Warzy, I believe?
Yeah. I don't understand why there's nothing wrong with that game. Nothing.
No, the floating backpacks that you see running around the woods has nothing to do with it.
Well, I thought it was hilarious that the developer comes out and just, well, it's not bugged, that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, he's the guy who made like Big Rigs, which is reputably one of the worst games ever made, apparently. I've never
Well,
even
if
played.
he has that sort of philosophy, I'm not surprised.
When you can drive through things, there's a problem.
Yeah.
I'm surprised
Well,
the game doesn't
I don't know,
catch that.
sometimes, some games that actually is a feature.
Yeah. I mean, at
Depends
least
on
in
how you're
DayZ,
going through.
in DayZ, it's just a mod, so you sort of anticipate it being sort of crap from time to time, but that's an actual game that's been released. So I don't understand how that guy gets any funding ever to release games.
You were gonna say, Jenesee?
I was just asking, I'm surprised Steam doesn't have some sort of check services where they make sure that, your game doesn't completely bug out and maybe have some sort of horrible virus that injects to everyone. I heard they don't have, fail-safes for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised with that, too. I mean, Steam's been a lot better about the customer focus that they've been going on, so it's kind of surprising they don't have that, I don't want to say Apple mentality, but some type of checks or balance to...
We should suggest it. I'll test all the games. I've got time. I've got
All the
time.
games belong to you.
All the games. Okay, so for myself, I'm still on my second playthrough of Spec Ops: The Line. That's pretty much what I've been. Oh, and I've played a little bit of the Path of Exile beta. That's been interesting.
Oh yeah, I signed up for the Elder Scrolls beta too for online.
Yes, me too.
Yes.
We can all hold our breath collectively for a long time.
Yeah, because let's see. When I tried to apply, the servers were down. I wonder why. It wouldn't have anything to do with the massiveness of the Elder Scrolls game fan base, would it?
Reminds me of BlizzCon. The tickets go on sale at a specific time. As soon as that time rolls around, the server crashes, and by the time they go back up again, all the tickets are gone.
Jeez, is this a new MMO launch or any game that uses always online DRM?
Nope, it's just BlizzCon.
So it's so they're gonna throw up an Area 37 then. Jenesee, seeing how you are one of our guests, why don't you? Why is the mentality of when the term gamer is given, why is it automatically attached to the male demographic, do you think?
I think there's a whole lot of reasons. Yeah. First one being advertising. It's kind of the demographic that's advertised for when you look for games. You see commercials that I think would be appealing to, 18 to probably 45 male category. Well, my opinion is that the gaming industry in itself has a lot of tie, especially development, to computer sciences and fields that women were not necessarily typically involved in. I think in the 1990s, 29% of women were involved in that sort of mathematics and computer sciences field. So, as the percentage of women grow in gaming, I think it's just something that it hasn't quite caught up with the advertisement section. So I think eventually you probably will see that turn around. But right now, because I think it's 40% of women that are gamers right now in the gaming. If you break it down, you say how many gamers are women? I think 40% is what it is right now.
I think about 40% is the last number I heard.
Yeah.
So because of that, I think they just it's not something that's caught up. The advertising and the kind of targeting of women, I just think hasn't caught up yet.
It's weird because I'm before needing it overly complex, I'm transgender, male to female, and so I have kind of some different experiences going into this topic, and I've seen, there's a lot of times when there are just these stereotypes that we have, these kind of archetypal images that we have of everything. And a lot of times you'll see this stuff come up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I heard something weird on the line there, but a lot of times stuff will come up into your mind, and you don't even think of this mental image you have, and it's usually gender specific. It's usually, male or female, depending on the archetype that you're envisioning inside media. And this applies a lot of the time to everyday life as well, because you think of businessman. You don't typically think of businesswoman unless someone specifically mentions a businesswoman. So you don't really apply the gender-neutral concepts a lot of the times to most people when you think about it, because our society has a tendency to think of male as default.
Well, I said before, and I think it's a matter of, it hasn't caught up. I mean, I can remember as a kid, growing up, and my parents, it was, oh, we got a new video game system. Oh, it's from my brother. And, oh, she's not going to play. And having to fight with my brother, to try and let me play with it. And then that really never happened. And so I think the main thing is that we, and maybe I think in certain respects as well, it's almost become more acceptable. I know in the last, say 10 years, that I at least run into a lot more female gamers than I did. Today I run into more than I did, say, 10 years ago. Now, maybe it's because of the area I live in now versus where I did 10 years ago, or it's the fact that maybe people were feeling more acceptable being able to say, I'm a gamer, but I think it's still, there still is that, I have to say, but there's still that stereotype of video games are a male thing, and, we're just going to keep it that way.
I think a lot of it has to do with media in general. It's always been depicted that guys are gamers. It's never really depicted that girls are. And when you look now, and you sort of watch TV shows and everything, where gaming has become sort of an everyday thing in every home, everywhere, you start to see that they're starting to include women in that category. They're showing them more often playing games, referencing games, game types, stuff like that, whereas, maybe 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, they never really included women in that at all. They definitely need to pick up on it, I guess. If I saw a commercial, some NFL game, I can't remember what it is, two guys sitting on a couch, why not have one of them be a chick? Because they too.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it is the predetermined stereotypes that we still are facing, and that the industry in and of itself, with gaming being based around technology and IT type fields, and those generically speaking being fairly male heavy. I don't think the rest of the portion of the industry where other jobs are accessible, be it developers or some other framework, have been quite caught up with the overall demographic, like Jenesee had mentioned.
I have some other stuff about Brianna's response that I definitely think could be added, and I don't know how deep you want to go into all this, or I don't want to talk over everyone, but I feel
go ahead.
Well, I feel like her talking about stereotypes of women definitely probably plays a factor, because if you play a game and you see things like, there's not a lot of independence for some of the women in the games that you play. Like you talk about Hitman Absolution. If you look in there, the little girl that his job is is to escort, basically is completely helpless, and she doesn't have to be. I mean, she is kind of a killing machine, hit girl in her own right, and she doesn't really get a chance to express that. She's basically just there to be escorted. And the other women in that game are kind of just eye candy. They don't do a whole lot. And if you are a woman playing a game like that, it doesn't make you feel very like empowered. I hate to throw that word out there, but I think that's changing. I mean, you see characters like I guess Chell, if I'm saying it right. Portal, if you ever played Portal 1 or 2, the main character, the woman in it, she's definitely not falling into that stereotype. And even the new Lara Croft, although I feel like she could still serve as a flotation device, is a lot more, real to life, I'd say. And some of that stuff is changing.
And one major thing you mentioned, you got, the helpless girl thing, and that wouldn't be such a concern if not for the fact that that's so frequently the situation, that's the damsel in distress stereotype. If it were occasionally the other way around, if you had like the guy being the helpless one more frequently, no one would even question it.
Yeah. Welcome to Mario and most Zelda games.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely. The predetermined. Jenesee, you mentioned like Lara Croft. I definitely know what you mean. There's no over sexualization of a female leads at all in any game, at all.
Well, even look at the advertisement for that. It looks like an excellent game, and I really want to play it. But just having that, poor advertising of the pseudo rape scene, which isn't even in the game, but just portraying it that way by cutting it, so that it looks like, ooh, there could be something happening here that, that would. I think the desire to protect Lara isn't like a good enough reason to play that game. I think the fact that Lara is amazing, she's got guns that never end, and she can really kick some butt is probably the reason to play that game. Not that you might have to save her from a band of would-be rapists.
Right.
Just saying.
So, game developers, here's just a small suggestion: women don't need to be portrayed as the Bowser stole me, took me to a tower, I need to go have the plumber rescue me kind of thing. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right,
Actually,
and as an extension of that, when Princess Peach does get a game, it doesn't have to be totally pink.
no.
And even
In
to
fact,
go off that,
give the game to Daisy, because it won't be pink.
It makes me think too, to bounce off that, Bree, is it's like, to see a game, it makes me think of, and I'm totally forgetting her name, the character from, it was the GameCube game, she had the camera, photographer, why am I drawing a total blank on it?
Jade from, what's the name of that? Beyond Good and Evil.
That's what I was thinking, but I'm like, in my head, I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. I want to see, it's not that, and I mean, and this is across the board too for, even male characters as well. Why can't you give me a attractive, but not this just completely over the top character? Do you know what I mean? And that goes across the board from Gears of War, the Gears of War characters to Tomb Raider, to Lara Croft. It doesn't matter. They're just so to the extreme. And it's like, what if I just want to play, Jane somewhat ordinary and Joe somewhat ordinary. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I think there's a sense in the industry that games with female heroes won't sell. And I think that was true before, but you can definitely look at Mass Effect, if I want to throw that out there. And FemShep, I think, was probably just as popular as MaleShep. And I think a lot of that's changing now.
Don't get me started on that about Mass Effect.
Sorry, I brought it up.
I'm like, you look at Mass Effect, and yeah, FemShep was just as popular as BroShep, if not equal, if not even more so, to some extent. And yet they always put BroShep on the box.
For the fact that you could put makeup on her? And it was terrible makeup at that.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible.
Worst blush application ever.
Are you evil? No, it's just that purple blush.
The sad part is you think they'd have robots in the future at that point in the Mass Effect universe. It's like, get the Geth to do it.
It just reminds me of the Mythbusters thing where they did like a live presentation and they created like a gun that would paint the Mona Lisa. Just like shoot the paint on your face.
Oh man, that just sounds awesome. All right. We've already mentioned that the ESRB's own statistics as far as the demographics of, you know, the male-female split is about 40-60. 40% are female, 60% are male. Do you guys think that these are accurate as far as when it comes to your own dealings with the gaming industry and the community as a whole, though?
I do. I personally know, you know, I've got probably 10 fairly severely close friends, and you know, half of them are girls and all of them game, and it's not like I was attracted to them as a friend to just go out and hang out with them because of that, but it's just something that ended up being one of their qualities, something that they do. And I think there are a hell of a lot more out there who game than what this survey says. And they may have just hit an area that doesn't have as many, but I'm willing to bet that it's 50-50 even at this point. Just my opinion.
I think it depends what circle I'm talking about. I'm a teacher, and I'm like the oddity at work. You know, I'm the video game, you know, heavy metal, you know, music person, and I'm like the only one. And at my job, there is, you know, it's an elementary school, so it has early childhood up through 6th grade, and there's only two male teachers, and they don't. One's older, and then one's younger than I am, and he used to game, but doesn't really anymore. So I mean, nobody else there games. But when I look at my friends from high school or college, then I might find that, you know, 60-40 ratio a bit more realistic. So for me, I think it depends what area I'm looking at.
You know, that sounds like a reasonable statistic to me, but I'm always the worst person to ask about these sorts of things because I'm like totally antisocial. I mean, having some really nasty anxiety disorders, I don't socialize outside very much. I socialize a lot of time on the internet, so I might keep to certain crowds, so it might be a little sideways on from my
Jenesee?
perspective.
I think if you're talking about social games or mobile games, I think that's definitely accurate. And I also think I agree with Tom. It kind of depends where you are, like locationally in the country. If you're talking about console games or PC, you know, straight up games, I think that's a much lower ratio. But again, I live in the middle of Bumble, so there's no like actual, you know, I'm very rare to be a gamer here, and especially like a woman gamer. And there's really not a whole lot, I would say, in this area that do that. But again, if you're in more of like a California or in a major city, I think that your ratio is probably a little better. So it might depend on your location as well and what type of games you're talking about.
Location plays a pretty big factor. Up where I am, the ratio is probably a lot lower. I know a lot of gamers, but on the same note, there's not so much. The population density is not high enough to make an accurate call on that. Rachel, you know what I mean when I say that.
I'm trying to keep my laughter contained.
So,
at that
I mean,
fact.
a lot of
But
it does depend
it's sad
where
but true.
you probably live. If you live in, say, I use the term city very loosely for up here, but if you live in a major population area, the ratio probably quantifies that 40-60 split more accurately than I think, say, out in the rural areas of the country, and we're talking U.S. specifically here. We're not talking global because, well, all of us are from the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder if the statistics take into account that, say, like, I live in a suburb of Denver, and so it's like maybe the ratio is higher, say, in my area, and the ratio takes into account those rural areas where the population might not be so high, and so maybe the number, there it might be, 30-70. But here, maybe it's 50-50. Do you know what I mean? But I think the point that was made about social and mobile games is a really important one, because I think there is that critical distinction. I mean, what classifies a gamer as being a gamer? Is it somebody who plays, Angry Birds on their phone? Or is it somebody who, has a console at home or a gaming PC? Do you know what I mean? So there's that. I don't know what the questions were asked from when the ESRB was creating, was doing this survey or this study of, is it just I play a game, once a week or twice a week, and a game could be Angry Birds all the way to, Halo 4.
No.
I don't know. Does anybody know?
No. I assume they probably just asked, do you play video games? And the problem with that is a lot of people, as we mentioned on the last podcast, a lot of people do not recognize a lot of like Facebook games and stuff like that as actual video games, which if you're playing them, they're games, whether or not you like it.
Most definitely. There's it really does depend on whether or not that the question of on the survey is whether or not the question is accurate to what your intention is. Just being labeled a gamer is, is kind of eh.
I would hope they would at least try to keep it to people who spend a significant amount of time gaming, if not specific types of games, but at least people that probably spend at least an hour a week gaming.
But even then, I'm thinking too, and I totally my train of thought just completely left me. I remember now. I think in a lot of respects, the term gamer has definitely taken on a completely different connotation than it did 10 years ago. You know what I mean? To go around and say you're a gamer it doesn't have the same immediate reaction or the mental image that it did, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So maybe people are more comfortable with throwing around I'm a gamer, it's awesome. Whereas maybe before they might not have.
The term gamer is interesting dichotomy now. It does beg the question, what qualifies a quote-unquote gamer? Because, you have your demographics of casual, hardcore, mobile, throw around whatever term you want. But it all depends on the type of questioning that the ESRB used when they came up with this 2 in 5 gamers are female statistic of theirs. But do you guys feel that more can be done to, say, level out the gender representation within the industry and the community as a whole, though? Be it from gamers ourselves or developers, publishers, to try to equalize the 2 to 5 ratio a little more, or shall we say?
Yeah, I mean, to go with what I said earlier, I think representing females in media as gamers more often would be beneficial, I think, in general. I mean, it, in ways, could basically make more women feel comfortable saying that they play games, especially if, you know, they're hardcore into gaming and spend a lot of their time doing it. Another thing they could simply do is just to, you know, drop the general stereotype. I mean, like I said, I know as many women who game as I do men heavily, and to me it just doesn't make any sense to say that only men game. It just doesn't, and I personally don't. I don't always, you know, play a game and immediately say, oh, you know, that dude just killed me. I say, whoever that is, why? Why did you shoot me? Why? I don't have to gender discriminate because I never know. You never have any idea. And to be honest, too, you know, some of the women that I've played games with could be dudes with voice effects. You never know.
I think there's a certain lack of acknowledgement for some of the women who are doing things in the industry right now, and I think a way to help that is just to kind of spotlight it a little more, not necessarily because they're women, because they've done a lot of things like, you know, throwing names out there like Amy Hennig, Gears of War 3, Uncharted, Mary DeMarc, Deus Ex, Human Revolution, you know, Kelly Santiago. All of those women have done amazing things, but you don't really hear about them that much being talked about. So I think if you kind of spotlight some of the people that are doing good things that also are women. I know there was an article this week that came out. I think her name was Gabrielle Talandro. She's the executive vice president of EA, and she had this article that came out this week talking about how she felt like sexism wasn't necessarily the thing that's holding back women in the industry. It's just that there aren't enough of them working in video games. So I guess just to have women come through, you know, studying to be designers and be supportive of that, have a non-hostile environment for them to learn how to be game designers. And I think if there are more game designers, the games themselves will kind of reflect better balance.
No, I think that's a really great point, because I think it's a matter of if we want to see stronger, you know, female characters, then we need to have the people in place. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a female character, you know, a female designing a female character. I mean, it could still be a male designing a female character, but, you know, it comes down to people putting in the effort to acknowledge those good characters and things like that, and the ones that portray women in a more realistic and, I don't know, more pleasing. I don't know if that's the right word. It doesn't portray them as, you know, these helpless characters that need to be rescued or saved or told what to do or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, you know, we do need to promote women in the industry a lot more and get people going out and showing that there are some really great female game developers that, you know, that a lot of times aren't even recognized. You know, I've seen like people complaining where they have like a husband and wife team that develop games, and you know, the husband gets all the credit, and it's like, hang on, it was a partnered project. So, yeah, you know, women need to be more prominent, and so I think that needs to be something that gets encouraged.
Have you heard of the One Reason Why
Yeah.
movement? There's like a hashtag on Twitter, One Reason Why.
Yeah, actually, that's where I got that story about the husband and wife team.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like that they're offering mentorship to other people in the industry, other women in the industry, and telling that stuff. I mean, that's all out there now. So if people want to understand, you know, like that, they can look at the hashtag and get those stories. I did not realize that was one of them. Nice.
Yeah, definitely agree that some of it is the industry insularization sometimes that it's tough to get into as far as college or whatever circumstance it is to get to it. There's not enough coming out from, say, the colleges or whatever into the industry, and the ones that are in it are in it. People like Jade Raymond from Ubisoft comes to mind. Wasn't she the creative director for Assassin's Creed for a while, if I remember correctly? And it's great to see that in the industry, and unfortunately, we don't see enough of that though. We don't see people taking franchises, taking it and being given the chance to run with it. And I mean, there are plenty of women within the industry that we all can mention that have done significant things in the industry. Jenesee, who is the person from Steam that you interviewed a while ago? Can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Which one? There are a couple women. Stephanie Harvey, is that who you're talking about? Oh,
yes.
Jerry Ellsworth, is that who you're talking about? She's an electrical engineer for Valve.
It's stuff like that we don't get to see a lot of, though. As generic gamers, so the stereotype tends to persist that there aren't, male equal gamer kind of thing, or gamer equal male, I should say. Which is too bad, because there are a lot of great things coming out of a lot of great companies, and it's not all done by males.
Don't you
And
think
also,
that's kind of... Go ahead.
And also, a lot of times when things are done by women, they get a lot of hate for it for no reason. I can think of at least one particular incident about an employee for BioWare. I forget what her name was, but yeah, I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's like, oh my god, why is every guy on the internet suddenly has this desire to hate this woman they don't even know anything about?
Yeah. I know which incident you're referring to. That would, for those that don't know, that was the incident where I believe it was a story. One of the writers for BioWare had said that they would like to see less emphasis on action and more on story elements of the games. More or less is what her intent was. Everyone misconstrued it as something else.
I guess I was just going to say, I think this is sort of something that happens in a lot of different fields. I mean, you can look at wrestling, right? Let's use wrestling. There are many women in wrestling, Tamina, Sarita, other famous women in wrestling. But when you think of wrestling, you think of guys, and that's just what you think of. Probably because that's more publicized and all the reasons we've stated. And I think it's similar in gaming, that you just automatically think of men, and eventually over time, hopefully that will change. But it's one of those things where gaming is kind of seen, I think, as almost like a strength-based thing, because a lot of characters are doing physical fighting and shooting things, and a lot of games are like that. So it's almost like been tied to guys for a while, even though anyone can pick up that controller and make the character move. And I think similar, to wrestling, that eventually over time, hopefully, there will be enough women in the industry that you won't think of it automatically like that.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I'm not gonna lie. What would you say are some of the best things the gaming community and industry have done to more gender diversity in the industry?
Oddly enough, I think probably the best thing I've seen is Pokemon. I thought long and hard about this question, and I have to admit, I think Pokemon is probably the most gender-neutral game in existence, at least the most well-known one. And it's just like, you can't go into Pokemon and not think, okay, you're going to think about the Pokemon. You're not thinking about, is it a man's game? Is it a woman's game? It's just an everybody game. And so I guess that's probably where I go with that.
It's sort of difficult for me to come up with one for this. because I don't feel that the industry has overall done anything going after this, which, is sort of a bummer. I mean, it's hard to say that, like, Laura Croft is one of the first ones, because originally she was like and originally I say that, she is now too. She's sort of like a really sexist character. She's just, they basically made her so that guys would play the game originally. And that's why they made her a lead. And while now she might be being used more to get other women to play the game, it's just difficult for me to actually say that the industry has really done anything.
I agree. I'm having a hard time thinking of things where it's like, wow, that really stands out to me, or that really makes me think about things. Because even, even with, I said earlier in the podcast that I've been playing Resident Evil 6. I've played it way too much. And I mean, even just the juxtaposition between, say, Helena's character to Ada's character. Ada comes across as this, like, very strong, woman. And it's not to say that Helena's not, but at the same time, it's like, she's, and apparently I'm getting a phone call from an unavailable number. Good to know. It's still, it's like this constant need for approval kind of situation. And for me, that's kind of annoying, and it just kind of bugged me. And there was a lot of things about her character that I was just like, oh my god, shut up. And so I feel like there are some times where games really get it right, and then there are some times where games get it really wrong. So it's hard for me to really think of anything that stands out in my mind of, something that I can point to exactly and say, that right there, that's the way it needs to be.
If we're talking about the industry and the community and things that they can do or are doing, I think one of the biggest things, and I kind of hate to say it, but is the reaction to a lot of the controversies that have come up this year. I mean, I think everyone can kind of remember, like, Anita Sarkeesian and some of the Booth Babes versus Geek discussions. And they've kind of put, like, the spotlight kind of inadvertently on the issue, I think, of equality in games, because there's been such a backlash from that, where the community's kind of stood up in industry as well and said, like, that's just not acceptable. And I think there's been more thinking on the subject, because of some of these negative things that have happened that kind of have brought the topic to mind, maybe. So kind of turning a negative into a positive. And I think the community is pretty supportive of things like the Frag Dolls, or some of our competitive teams like Check Six Divas, and some of the more, like, obvious, I guess, representatives of like women in gaming per se. And obviously we have to not forget the fact that, and I have to do this, I'm so sorry, Matthew, making the video for HDL, which is about, like, what is a gamer. I think there are a lot of those discussions going on right now where, you'll see videos or commentary by everybody just kind of saying, like, oh, I'm a gamer. And the more of those you see that are just everyone, the more you kind of see that it's not like a particular stereotype that characterizes, like, what a gamer is. And I think that will help to equalize some of this.
Just jump off that, I think there is the issue I have seen with, and I think I have to say I see it more from female gamers than I do from male gamers, about those female gamers that try to use that stereotype of, like, oh, it's a female gamer, and that guys just think it's totally awesome, and they use that to their advantage. You know what I mean? Like, they try to milk it, and that just irritates me. It's like, I'm a gamer. It doesn't matter what gender I am. I don't need special treatment. And I mean, I would find that, playing MMOs that, the second they found out I was really a chick, I got this preferential treatment. And it's like, I don't need preferential treatment. But there are those people out there that will totally eat that up. And so I think it takes, the community and those people saying, well, if we want to be treated just like everybody else, then you need to stop perpetuating that stereotype.
The industry has done a lot of interesting stuff. I think a lot of the refocus on trying not to over sexualize a lot of characters and actually have some real depth to them has been an interesting byproduct of a lot of the debates, Jenesee, you had mentioned within the past year or so that we've been having about gender diversification within the industry. The games are being redesigned in that regard. The focus on actual character development, not just one-dimensional stuff. I'm looking at mostly Dead or Alive type games when I say one-dimensional. It's not just about all the eye candy. It's about them showing up as people, be it the characters or be it people within the industry. And it's been kind of nice to see that change. The community is kind of a split from my own interpretations of it. It's been kind of back and forth. Some things they agree, some they don't, and that's kind of the nature of the game, I guess, though. Yeah.
If I have a question for you, Matthew. I don't know if you want me to play devil's advocate here, but I have a question. If you want to include it, and obviously your choice. What do you think about the concept of competitive teams being forced to include one woman per team, which is obviously tokenism, but it's kind of like affirmative action for women in gaming. Like, what do you think about the concept of being required to include, women in particular sections, or the fact that maybe you'll have requirements that there have to be, 5 designers on a team of 20 or something like that. Do you think those requirements are good, or do you think that's like just let it happen on its own?
That's getting into the politics. That can be a loaded issue regardless. If you do it, you can say, well, it's a token, like you had said, or if you don't do it, you can say, well, it's hard for anyone of, say, an opposite gender, be it male or female, regardless of the industry, that it's hard for them to get into because they're not of the majority gender that it's in that industry. It's a debate that goes on in like the IT field or for those that are in the open source movement or programmers or whatnot. There's not a lot of women in those circles of developers and software makers, and things like affirmative action and whatnot do come up. It has its pros and cons. I think if implemented right, it can be helpful, but having the set prerequisite of like you mentioned, the professional teams having more or less a token female gamer is not the way to go about it. How you go about it, I don't know, but the way that a lot of places implement it is not the way it doesn't work. It's like you said, it's a token gesture more than anything. My opinion might be different from, say, Rachel. What would yours on that particular topic be?
I think, personally, the first thing that comes to my mind is that's dumb. I think it's ridiculous to require something. I mean, I can understand the need to, say, allow for not have the discrimination of, if there's a female and a male going up for a spot on a competitive, team, then, she should be treated, the female should be treated exactly the same as the male, but if it were me, I wouldn't want to win just because of some clause of, like, they have to have a female on the team. I'd want to get my spot because of my skill.
I think requiring it, like Rachel said, that's dumb. But, encouraging to look out of the box and try and find people that maybe hadn't considered before that aren't so similar to others already in a team or something, that's probably okay. Just to just sort of expand your horizons a little bit if you're building the team. I guess if you're not building the team, then why are we asking the question? But yeah, I think that's pretty much my point. I say that a lot.
I think that requiring it is probably a little far. If you sort of pool a bunch of players together, I think the best way to do things would be to try to include females on more teams. That way, they're out there. Instead of just grouping them together immediately and saying, especially if it's a competitive team, instead of grouping them together and saying, oh, here's our female group, just pull the names so everybody is spread out equally and make them that way everybody's balanced no matter what. It doesn't force anybody to have anybody on their team, but at the same time, it does. If you catch what I'm saying.
I know what you mean. It's a complicated issue. Like you guys said, I don't think a requirement is the best way to go about it. Requirements, it just boils down to being a token gesture. Oh, here's our, token female gamer. That's not, no. Can it be more encouraged? Yeah, it can be. Can you, there are ways to go about encouraging it and people actually doing it. How you go about that, that's up to higher powers and whatnot to decide at the end of the day. And that is a long topic that I don't think we'll have enough time for in this podcast. But, so we can say for the most part that there needs to be more done for fixing that particular issue within the gaming community. So with that said, that is all I have, but let's look at what games are you folks looking forward to that are coming up shortly.
I'm a huge StarCraft nut, so I'm definitely looking forward to Heart of the Swarm coming up in March.
I'm actually getting pretty excited for DayZ standalone. I know I've already talked about this game like ridiculous, but they're basically going with the Arma 3 build, which has significantly been improved upon compared to Arma 2. Arma 2 is just like atrocious. That there's even a mod of it is confusing and scary. And they're definitely improving a lot of things and problems with the game. I mean, there are buildings you can't enter that are buildings you should be able to enter because the doors aren't wide enough. You get stuck on the door, you get killed. There's a lot of physics issues in the game and everything, and they're going through everything with a fine-tooth comb because they have the funding to do it now. So it's very exciting for me. I can't wait to see it.
I'm trying very hard to resist Skyrim Dragonborn. I'm still struggling through the other DLC just because it takes forever. But I really want to play it, so I don't know what I'll do with that.
Something earlier, but maybe I didn't register. Dead Space 3. My husband and I are currently shifting from being console gamers. Well, for him, back to being a PC gamer, but for me to being not just a PC gamer for MMOs. So we're debating if we're going to get Dead Space for the console or the PC. And either way, I'm super excited that it's co-op. And I'm going to try not just because the other games totally freaked me out. They're awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say for me, as much debate as it has brought this podcast, I'm looking forward to the new Tomb Raider. Soul Sacrifice for the Vita looks pretty interesting. That's coming out in April. So there are a few games that should be quite interesting, shall we say, on the horizon. But Jenesee, where can people find you online?
GrayAreaPodcast.com. Gray is Grey, or Jenesee.com. And iTunes is really the easiest way to get the podcast.
You can find me at VertigoMediaNetwork.com, and you can find us on YouTube at Vertigo Radio Live, one word, unfortunately. But
You
there
can
you go.
find Bree, Amalthea, or Rachel, and myself on holdtheline.com, and content coming down the pipeline. So that is it, community and fellow gamers. Thank you for joining us, and see you guys next time. Gamers and holdtheline.com community members, I would like to make an awesome kick-ass announcement for the community. Holdtheline.com is proud to announce that the Great Area Podcast is the official podcast of choice by holdtheline.com. So what does this mean for holdtheline.com? This means that we will be featuring an assortment of audio and video content from Jenesee and her team over at the Great Area Podcast, alongside the holdtheline.com podcast and the holdtheline.com media as well. So make sure you check out the Great Area Podcast for interviews with developers, gaming news, reviews, with a focus on the interpersonal relationships between gamers. And holdtheline.com, where we talk about what's going on in the gaming industry from a consumer perspective. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the holdtheline.com podcast. You can find us on Twitter with @HTLcom. You can find us on Facebook at holdtheline.com. You can also find us with an iTunes search for the podcast with holdtheline.com as well. You can also find an RSS feed for holdthelinecom.podbean.com/feed. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please visit the gaming media section of our forums and leave your questions, comments, and concerns there. And remember, we're holding the line for gamers.